For a moment, I didn't recognize you.
Hi, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming today to the e-workshop of the Art and Science of Coaching Swimming. Today we are very glad to have all our coaches from various organizations. We have Gary and Marcus from Singapore Swimming Association.
Hello.
Leonard from National Youth Sports Institute.
Hey.
We have Marcus Jiang from Singapore Sports School, and we have Carl De Vries from Athletics. So
Hello.
Today we have like over 211 people who signed up, and out of this, over 150 are swimming coaches, and we even have like many coaches, like 50 over from 19 different sports. Boccia, taekwondo, basketball, and wushu, all raring to understand what is the art and science of coaching swimming. So we are very, very excited to have the coaches to share with us on different elements of what they have done. Without further ado, actually Gary and I will co-host this session, and we have muted everybody's mic to make it, to allow everybody to hear ourselves very clearly. So we will get Gary to kick off today's session. Gary, over to you.
Okay. Thanks, Lynette. Hi, everybody. Thank you. I really appreciate the time to be here with everybody and all my fellow coaches around. It's a real privilege to actually be able to present certain things to you guys. And I think the first topic I think most of us actually face is dealing with parents, and that's my domain, I guess. So I will be sharing my screen on right now. Give me 1 minute. Okay. Right. Can everyone see the screen? Okay. Right. Okay. So let's get right into it. Okay. So partnering with parents, I know a lot of you guys are actually experiencing quite a big difficulty with dealing with parents, especially in this climate of Singapore, or around the region, especially especially Southeast Asia, where education is a bit more oriented towards, kids are more oriented towards education rather than sports. But I think we've had a bit of success with dealing with several swimmers that we've managed to pull through during the different phases of dealing with school as well as swimming as well, or just sports in general. So, relative success in being able to see them through their careers as well. So let me see. Okay, yeah. So I was a bit actually inspired by a TED Talk, a very simple TED Talk that talked about water and how water is an ever-evolving thing and moves around really well in an ecosystem. And water is somewhat like a humble element. Okay. So humbling yourself to listen to feedback, good or bad, dealing with parents who are just like bad eggs, just dealing with them in different ways. So in order to, as coaches, I think we need to be able to humble ourselves, listen to their feedback, okay? And try to put yourself in their shoes, the struggles that they may face as parents as well, and then try to find out who they are as people. There are bad eggs, but don't let that steer you away from doing what is right for the child. I mean, especially the athlete, a lot of coaches, we have certain dreams for the swimmers, or athletes, but most of them get taken aback with a lot of bad parenting as well. But, it's not for us to judge. We are there to just help facilitate and move these kids along in the right direction. And, most of the time you'll be blamed one way or another, but we just got to accept and move on. That's something that as coaches, we need to have. The humility side of things. Okay. The next thing is harmony, being flexible. Stick with your beliefs, but always be willing to also accept the flaws of others. Okay. Always explain to parents that you want to work closely with them in bringing out the best in the child. And parents can be rather transactional, but if you show that you care for the child as much as they do, I think they will eventually buy in. So, that's just one side of where I see another point on where I believe some of the athletes can actually, your parents will actually buy into certain things that you do. All right. And, openness, these are actually parents of swimmers, where we attended during the Singapore National Swimming Championships, where I think one of the club's parents actually hosted a party, and then, right, it was during national age groups. So, willingness to go beyond the call of just a coach, the openness of accepting and understanding the athlete, and even the parents as well. It's nothing wrong being afraid to socialize with the parents, and being understanding a bit more about themselves as people. You organize parent support events where you tell your club parents what your vision is. I think that's very important. And just speak to them as friends, allow them to come into your life, be frank and honest when dealing with a child's difficulties and practices. So from my experience, when I dealt with this, I've realized that most of the time when I'm dealing with a lot of parents, when you become their friends, eventually you can be very frank and honest with your approach to dealing with a difficulty of a child. When a child goes through a very difficult period in their phase of their training, you will want them on your side as well. So, a very different approach. I think a lot of us, we do a very high-handed approach sometimes as coaches, where we feel like my way or the highway. I think it's okay once in a while, but I think you always start out with a bit of that humble attitude towards this, towards parents as well, or towards actually dealing with these parents. So, let your guard down once in a while. Don't be too standoffish at times, and then, you will not get the outcome that you will want. So, so this is a swimmer of mine. I put out a picture to just give a bit of the challenges that we face currently right now in our age when we're coaching is, direct schools admission, social media. For those foreign coaches who don't know what direct schools admission is, it's our local system of allowing kids to transition into secondary schools and all the different institutions through a talent or that an athlete has. Changing the mindset of swimmers, educational ambitions versus sporting ambitions. And right now, COVID-19, the worth of a coach to a parent, I think this is actually very important to understand that, this COVID-19 has actually changed the way, in general, coaches are perceived. Parents right now may feel that just because they're not back at the pool, they can be the coach to the child. So we need to be able to tell the parents to still give the athlete an opportunity to hear a different voice, not just our voice as well. So that's for me. And so like I said, my whole inspiration for coming out of this was due to water. So water is, in the humility of things, the humility is that it provides life for people. It gives life to others. Like you saw the example of having an athlete, giving them life, harmony, being in one with the different elements as well. And being, as long as you can work through it with your parent, I think it's going to get you somewhere. And the openness of being in different elements, like, so water is, can evolve from gas into liquid into solid. So you have to be flexible and open and willing to make changes as well. So yep, I think that's it for me. I think we will take those questions in a bit, but before I pass on to Marcus, I just want to let everyone know that it is a very difficult time for everybody at this stage, and I hope that everyone can live in harmony and work together. And especially working with parents, they are the very key people that you have to actually work with during this difficult period of time for your athletes. So Marcus, can I pass it on to you?
Yeah. You're gonna. Okay. So for my topic, I'll be talking about the how we navigate the motivation side and communicating with the swimmers on a daily basis. All right. So for myself, I think I'm still a fairly young coach. I only started coaching the National Training Center over the past 2.5 years. So these are just some of my experiences in a high performance setting. Transitioning from a national swimmer into a into a coach, and how I deal with the swimmers on a daily basis. So I'll go through two parts of it. So one of it will be how swimmers right now can be very either ego oriented or task oriented, and there are two portions of it, right? So these are skills that that you have to try to encourage, or you should try to put forth to the swimmers that there are two different kinds of people, right? So how I see them is that when they're a lot younger, these swimmers tend to be fairly ego driven, right? So and within the squad you have different characters that will test your skills as a coach as well. So these are some of the things that I went through as a junior coach into now I'm the assistant coach for the NTC. So some of the differences are, when you see your swimmers and they say, oh, I didn't do well because I'm not talented enough, or versus I didn't do well because I failed to put in 100% at training, right? So the ego-oriented goals or ego-oriented swimmers are the ones that say that I'm always not talented. They always kind of look inwards, and these are some of the things that we have to try to navigate on a daily basis, right? Now, I think what we first and foremost have to understand is the competency of the swimmer, right, does not depend on the talent at all. I really don't like to tell my swimmers that they are very talented, or at least I try not to tell them so much, right? And this is due to the fact that most of the times, if a swimmer is good, or if an athlete is good, they're most probably going to hear it all the time from their parents at home, their relatives, so on and so forth. They say, oh, you're so talented, you're this and that. And what I've seen so far is that athletes who keep thinking that they're talented from a young age are far more susceptible to develop goals that are very ego-centered, right? So things like, if they do well, then it's all on them. But also it's a double-edged sword, because if they don't do well, then the problem lies when they meet that failure, right? So when they start failing and they start to, I can't really progress, or when they hit a very plateau part of their training competing career, then they attribute all that failure to their talent and not the kind of effort that they want to put in, right? And the other thing that I usually see is this idea of being scared to race, being scared to swim, being scared to swim in a big event. And this thing I think I attribute it to our success and very results-based society, right? If I don't do well, my parents will scold me. If I don't score a high mark in my school, my parents will scold me. I'll be mocked. I'll be called stupid, or very negative connotations. So for us as coaches, I try to encourage the swimmers to recognize competition as a marker or a milestone for growth and progression. Right? So, if we keep instilling that portion during training sessions, that results are more than just a time on the scoreboard, on the time board, then they as swimmers will start to understand that their worth is not defined by how fast they swim. And since nobody can actually prepare 100% for every race, even though we try to achieve as close to perfection as possible, through race simulation training or race-based training, I think we have to always try to take the positive route to try and train our swimmers, right? So that is, I think, one big thing in my training sessions, where I always try to encourage the process versus just the results, right? So even if the swimmer swims a good time, the good time is a good time, but there's so many things that moves the swimmer to achieve that good time that I feel like is way more important in this point, in this environment, especially in today's environment, right? So process-driven athletes rather than results-driven athletes, I feel like, if we break down the training goals and make it more detail-oriented, looking into the sets, understanding the sets, creates a much stronger mentally athlete than getting them to just focus on just the results. And also, during the training, we try to, bring that love of competing by building certain training sessions and having something like a surprise set at the end of a hard training session, just to have that challenge of, okay, now I have to really step up and try to do the best I can, no matter what my condition is, no matter how tired I am, I have to try and just push one big one at the end of the set. So, that kind of thing, helps to encourage athletes to kind of live on the edge a little bit, prevent them from having too much self-protection during a hard session. And sometimes this is also one of the few reasons why, when you're dealing with high performance athletes, it helps them to revisit the reasons why they really want to be a high performance athlete. So, I'm going to move on to the other part, which is the communication and how we navigate, these topics through our daily life. And I think communication in this present day environment is extremely distracting. You have so many things that is competing for your attention, right? So as a swimmer, right now you have your computer, your TV, and then you have social media, right? I mean, right now we have so much distractions compared to when I was an athlete or when Gary was an athlete. They are inundated with so much information, from your Instagram, your Facebook, now even have your TikTok, and they're so used to having very short bursts of info, right? You can call it content rich or or whatever it is, and whether you agree or not, I think the information right now is disseminated to the swimmers at such a high pace that sometimes they forget one thing, and basically it's listening. So my first point in communication is listening and seeing. So the two of them, listening and seeing, is very different from just hearing and watching. So you have your active versus your passive way of doing it, right? So I always believe that listening goes both ways, as a coach and as a swimmer and as an athlete, right? Sometimes we as coaches, and what Gary said before, we fail to listen to our athletes. We fail to actually stop for a moment, and instead of taking the high-handed approach, we want to kind of level with them and actually listen to them, so that we can actually have that proper communication, right? Vice versa as well. So they listen to you and you also kind of listen to them. So instead of being an authoritarian, try to be more of like a custodian for their emotions, and having and especially right now, psychological needs is so important. You have school stress, you have home stress, you have emotional and personal pressure, right? So that has the highly stressed individual is always around you, right? And now mental health is becoming so extremely important as well. You have to do this on a very constant basis at the pool. Then you have also like non-verbal skills, which I find it really helps me in my coaching career. Is a daily affair, and the more time I spend my athletes, the more time I feel like I'm able to understand them. And these guys, they're so connected online that they're actually disconnected when they're talking to you. So we have to get better at reading and developing our own set of non-verbal cues to actually understand the swimmers a little bit better, right? So things like that, like non-verbal skills and listening, they really go hand in hand. Your conversation with them will have a little bit better, it'll be a little bit more active, while watching for these cues when you're talking to them, like body posture, hand gestures, and especially when you're talking to them as well, especially after a race, if they have a bad race, I think it's important for coaches to also understand how to manage the stress in that particular moment. The more stressed we are, the more likely we are to misread the people and the swimmers. So everyone also responds very differently to all these different they respond very differently to all these different sensory experiences. So everyone should try to find what's best for them to communicate to the swimmers, right? And in order to really send accurate non-verbal cues, you also want to try to be aware of your own emotions. When you're highly stressed, the things that come out of your mouth, your body language, the way you use your hands, the way you frown, you frown, or your facial expressions really come across very differently from the receiving end of what you're trying to say. So your athletes may misread you, and then at the end of the day, you don't get your point across, and then your athletes don't understand you as well, right? So, the last point, feedback. I think feedback is extremely important. How you want to communicate with your swimmers, and you really want to be as real and relative as possible, right? So, when you're dealing with high performance athletes, you don't really want to sugarcoat any of your words, right? Because at the same time, you don't really want to always choose the negative side of things, right? You always want to be as positive as possible and keeping it as a learning experience for them, right? Being very honest with them, keeping it real, right? Knowing the difference between just criticism and constructive criticism, right? High performance athletes, I think they know when they put in their 100% and they know when they put in their 99%. So, if you as a coach and you can't give them their 100% real talk, then I feel like, they will start to take you less seriously, take you less professionally. And I guess, our job as a coach is not to be liked, right? Our job as a coach is to make sure that, we tell the athletes as it is, and, help them grow through these conversations with them, help them grow to be a better athlete in future. Okay, so right now I'll transition to Leo, who will present to you his part on different strokes and different distances.
Okay, thanks, Mark. So I'm Leonard, the National Youth Head Coach with the National Youth Sports Institute, but I also coach at the National Training Center together with Gary and Marcus, and I coach mainly we coach everyone together, but coach mainly the middle distance. So training specificity. Okay, I think they assign topics that we can't really pronounce properly, so I'm going to say it again. Training specificity, changes to training plans, and age-appropriate activities, right? Okay, so I'll just try to cover what we do, what we did and have been doing at the National Training Center side on the high performance end. So, and try to cover through the pathway, the pipeline down to, a little bit more age-appropriate things. So I just had 3 points, and I think probably got to keep it short and sweet. So the first thing that we had to do was adapting to changes quickly during this during this whole period of time, right? So prior to when the circuit breaker was announced, the coaches met daily, almost every day, because of changing plans. It is literally almost every day. Three of us, myself, Gary, Marcus, and Stefan and Sonia, the National Head Coach and Technical Director, we had to keep changing plans every single day. And then when it was announced that circuit breaker was going to kick in like a couple of days after that, we had to act quick, start packing equipment, start replanning our whole training cycle. So everything shifted to home-based training, right? And we needed equipment like dumbbell, kettlebells, weight vests, stretch cords, you name it, anything that it's not like weight rack and stuff. So this, all our swimmers were given like a care pack to bring home when circuit breaker was announced. So we needed to plan and create some swim-specific land work, but also some swim-specific training, right? So for middle distance, I can speak for the middle distance side. I wanted to maintain the conditioning, especially on the legs, and the repetitive movement on the arms. Mobility work and getting to good swim shapes was crucial for us as well. Bulletproofing their joints, their shoulders, is part of that, and also energy systems work, right? So I had to modify my weekly training plan, which was 10 training sessions a week. In the end, even with dryland work, it was up to 9 sessions a week that I got our guys training on land. So the main objective was to prep them and keep them ready for when circuit breaker ends, which initially it was supposed to be 4 weeks, but then now it's extended to another 4 weeks when we found that out. So plans change again. So, okay, point number 2 for me is keep your dryland work interesting and safe. Safety is the one of the most important thing, because we don't have our eyes at them all the time when they train. For myself and Gary and Marcus, I think even Carl and Doug, I think we do Zoom sessions, but not every single session. So you got to make, I mean, for me, the one thing is I did things that we've already done before. So I know that they are capable of executing the exercises properly and they know the exercises. I didn't throw them too many new exercises. And also you need to plan it out properly. So I think possibly Carl and Doug will talk a little bit about the loading part of land work. And so, I mean, going back to basics is part of keeping your dry land work interesting and safe. Even with the older athletes, I went back to basics, like basic body movement, body weight stuff, getting them to learn how to move properly. So mobility is also another very important thing, which I broke down into 3 areas for the profile of swimmers that we had, which is ankle mobility because of the running and all the land work that they do. So ankle mobility was very important for swimmers because they still need to maintain that flexibility when we go back in the pool. Hip mobility, T-spine and shoulder. So T-spine and shoulder, I usually put it together. So these are all interrelated because, I mean, based on experience, hip tightness affect your lower back, T-spine tightness affect your shoulders, right? So these are all the things that I had to ensure that our swimmers continue doing. I wanted our swimmers to be supple and strong, right? So it comes to my third point. So age appropriate training. So if you break it down into, I'm assuming majority of coaches in Singapore, we coach youth, adolescents, and even early and middle childhood, right? So going back to basics, like I mentioned earlier, it's the easiest thing to do. It's very important to always go back to basics. So for early middle childhood, you want to, for age appropriate stuff, you can still incorporate swim specific work, but really you want to ensure that you give them an unlimited stroke platform by the time they get back to the water. So you've probably heard it many times that in this day and age, a lot of kids are not very good movers. So definitely add in mobility work, agility work, speed work, a lot of coordination work for kids. You can get a lot of fun stuff out from coordination work. Get them to do skipping, crawling. These are simple, basic stuff that everyone can do at home. For adolescents, that's where we start, adding in more energy systems development, a little bit more endurance and sports specific work with stretch courts. So I think there's some resource on the SSA page that you get to see some of the stretch court circuit and TRX work, or rather just mainly stretch courts work. And then anaerobic threshold training with running, cycling, and rowing for the older teens. So, yep. So I'm at the end of my part, the 3 points that I mentioned. So I'm going to hand it over to Doug to talk about athletic development.
Why am I muted? Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. Sorry, I got muted and unmuted twice. So thanks, Leo. Appreciate it. My name is Doug. I'm the new head coach at Sports School, and I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of developing an athletic development program. I've been fortunate enough to work with the youngest athletes to some of the oldest athletes. And one thing that remains constant is we're always building for their future. And especially with the young athletes, we're not any different than any other sport. We're building athletes and we're building and giving them a development foundation for their future. We happen to be using swimming for it, but for me, if my athletes or the athletes that I'm working with at a young age choose that swimming's not for them and they move on to a different sport later in their career, I want to have done my job by giving them an opportunity to develop a foundational set of skills through movement capabilities that allow them to transition to other sports effectively. And with that, we're always building for the future. We're not just building for this season or this year, but we want to build so that they can always consistently improve some sort of skill set or strength application as they grow through their athletic career. So I break it down into 3 phases. All right. The first phase at the youngest age, we're developing movement. We're developing movement capability, capacity, and balance. That goes through the sagittal plane, frontal plane, and the transverse plane. And the more movement capability and capacity we can give them, meaning an understanding of how different movements work in their body, the better they're going to be able to utilize those things later. Okay. So like, I use the pyramids as a great example. A pyramid can only be as tall as its base is. So the wider the foundation of movement that we give them at a younger age, the more effective they will be as they get older and as they become sport specific. And I'll get to that in a second. The second phase of athletic development requires factors of movement. And that means the connectivity of the movement throughout the body, okay, and how their body interacts with the environment. Whether you're working with an exercise where the feet are rooted to the ground or their hands are rooted to a bar, they need to be able to interact with their environment so that they are engaging the right muscles, so they don't develop poor compensatory patterning, and that they also are able to utilize the right joint articulations to make sure the movement is safe for them, right? So again, the second phase of that is factors of movement, how the body connects and how it interacts with its environment. Okay. The last phase of an athletic development program is sport-specific demands and applications. And if we've done phase 1 and 2 correctly, phase 3 interacts very, very heavily with somebody like Carl, and it actually enables Carl to do his job better. Okay. Because we can start applying sport-specific demands. We can apply things like energy and work capacity. We have full spectrum training because the menu of exercise that they're competent in is now significantly greater. So we can find different exercises that work better for their bodies. Longer limb people will have a significantly more difficult time deadlifting sometimes. So we can find other hip dominant exercises that enable them to be successful. Okay. And in that we will have multi-phase performance preparation. Okay. We'll have the effectiveness of the exercise. So are they doing the right thing? Can they do it right? The efficiency of their exercise. Can they do the right things right consistently? Improving the exercise, doing the right things better consistently. We're cutting away on the next level where we're doing away with things that don't directly benefit the sport specific demands, right? We have a copycat phase where they can start integrating because of their movement knowledge and their movement capacity. They can start integrating things that other successful people do and cutting out things that other successful people do that don't translate directly to what applies to them. Then we have the different phase or the different level where they're able, because we've given them this foundation, they're able to start doing things that other people are not doing in this moment. And then final, which is kind of the gold standard of that of the levels, is the impossible phase, where because they've been enabled and developed through a wide range of capabilities when they were younger, and they've followed a progressional pathway, that they're able to do things that have not been done before. And that's how we reach peak performances that are truly world-class, world standard, and hopefully in those moments, world records. So that's a pretty concise, short overview of an athletic development program, from how it progresses from the younger kids and how it flows all the way up into the elite level of the sport. And like I said, if we do our job right in athletic development, it flows naturally and enables people like Carl to do a great job as well. So with that, I'm gonna end it short there, and I'm gonna pass it over to Carl and let him talk on strength and conditioning.
Thanks, Doug. Hi, everyone. I'm Carl. I run a strength conditioning gym. At the same time, I also work with Gary and the national team with the swimming and mostly with the sprint team. I'm going to share my screen as well. I got just a simple presentation. All right. Okay, so strength conditioning for swimming. I usually focus on 3 components, okay? Range, mobility, strength, and then speed, power, and reaction. For me, range and mobility is one of the very key components in swimming. I feel why it's important. You need to be able to create shapes in the water, right? You need to be able to, it helps you to be efficient in the water. So being able to create those shapes in the water, obviously you need to transit that and make sure you are able to do that on land as well. So if there are mobility restrictions in the athlete, you will see that you won't be able to be, or you won't be able to get into specific shapes that you want as good as you want, right? So for posture on land exercises, if you're doing any of your land exercises, you must be able to make sure that they are able to replicate it in the water. Okay, so for example, if you're doing like a deadlift position, then your head, your neck, your body and everything has to be almost like a streamlined position. Same if you're doing a pull-up or any of the other exercises. Okay, for me, for strength, even in now, say for example, during this circuit breaker period, you know, some of the guys don't have access to any weights, to the gym or anything. Focus on your compound movements. So compound movement are your simple movements, multi-joint exercises, right? Your squats, your lunges, your pull-up, your push-ups. These are your basic exercises, and they have to be included in any program. Really, really simple to do. You don't need much. If you want to have added weight, you can basically use anything you have at home. A bag of rice, your detergent bottles, or even just a water bottle to do your exercise to add some resistance. Okay, another thing I focus a lot especially for when I'm working with the younger kids, is the single-sided exercises. So a lot of them, when they first come to me, we put them through a movement screen, and then we realize that, you know, there's a lot of imbalances between the left and the right side. And for that, I usually spend about 2 to 3 months where I put a lot of single-sided exercises into the program. And just to make sure, you know, I sort out any of the imbalances so that when they go back to swim, they don't have much of an issue. So that's for strength. Again, sorry. Yep. Focus on, again, like I said, focus on your fundamental movements. Okay, make sure the technique is perfect before moving on to more complex exercises. One, you know, if you want to rush onto your complex exercises, you're not, the chance of getting injured is going to increase, right? So you want to make sure that your fundamental movements are really, really strong. Some people ask me whether, you know, there are specific exercises to swimming. They're not. I wouldn't say that there are specific exercises. I say there are specific movements that you can focus on when you're swimming. If you can see the picture here, Shirlyn has her neck, her back all flat in one position. Okay, so if you think of that in the water, that's the same position you want them to be in the water. So you always want them to be in a nice, tall and long, you know, rib pitch down and all that. Again, the last point I want to make for strength is some people ask me, you know, how strong do I need my athlete to be? That you don't need them to be the strongest guy in the world, right? The strongest person doesn't always equate to being the fastest person in the water. So if they've got a good strength base, you know, strong enough, and then move on from there, work on different aspects that they might be weak at. Okay, so moving on from the strength component, we're going to the speed, power, reaction component. Okay, so once your technique is perfect, again, you can start to introduce speed into the movements. Even if it's a squat or a pull-up, you know, you can always do, say for example, a squat jump, or you pull up, loaded pull up with speed. You're looking to increase at how fast they can move the weight or move the resistance. Reaction drills. Okay, for me, reaction drills is all my guys will know it's a very important thing for me. One, I always tell them that it keeps your brain alert and it keeps you awake. Okay, and I like to incorporate a lot of this reaction stuff, simple reaction drills in before they warm up or as part of their warm up routine before competition. Okay, just to make sure they are more alert, getting them all ready and their mind is working as well. So you incorporate your reaction into your, you don't have to do specific stuff, but you can always incorporate your reaction drills into, you know, your, say for example, you're doing a seated jump where the guy sitting on, you can give him the goal, you can say, take your marks, go, you know, that's how you just incorporate simple reaction stuff into your exercises. Okay, and that's all for me. Thanks, Lynette.
Lynette, do you want me to continue with certain things?
Yep, we have a couple of questions here. We will address the questions first. We have Roderick Ing, who has actually filled his question upon registration. He's asking, what are some gaps in the current swimming scene and how do you think we can rectify it?
Okay, maybe I go through, I would suggest to all, maybe the panel guys here, just maybe keep it to like a minute due to the time frame that we have. Okay, so for me personally, the biggest gap that I see right now is high burnout rate among our swimmers as well. So, but that trend is actually slowly changing. I can see people, coaches actually making things a bit more fun for their respective swimmers and making things a bit more lighthearted. You know, gone are the days of just pounding mileage and working the athletes just hard. Working hard is a good thing, but working hard without any thought is also a bad thing as well. So we just got to be mindful of those, of the way we navigate through these things and make sure that the athlete is getting the full benefit of your training program. A lot of times right now, Singapore swimming, honestly, after the likes of Ting Wen, Joseph, Zhen Wen, we are going to face a bit of a downtrend in terms of the number of swimmers coming through. So I think it's very important that, and I saw a couple of questions with regards to Learn to Swim as well. Actually, it's very important. You guys are like the gateway towards these high performance. You know, you guys encourage the swimmers to come in on board to take up the sport, and we need capabilities from Learn Swim all the way up to the high performance level of coaches. So coaches who can encourage, coaches who can keep the swimmers in the sport, I think that's the first thing. And everything else are externalities that we can't control, especially like education, parental issues, and things like that. So we just need to be able to find what's important for us as coaches, work through the system, build a pipeline of athletes coming through, and just being able to keep certain things in principle, certain things in our coaching that's right for us, and we don't want to steer away too far from what is really just hard work for the athletes. I think maybe I get maybe Doug to talk about a bit more on this.
Yeah, and I think we could get into a whole long discussion about burnout and what to do about it. But in the end, we're coaches, and we're here to foster the development of these athletes, whether they're badminton, basketball, netball, whatever. We're here to foster the development of these athletes. Swimming is a hard one because it's very, very definitive in terms of what you see on the board is what you got, and it's what you earned, right? And but at the same time, we need to recognize that we're fostering the development of children, and by making it fun, by understanding where we all sit in the chain and how we can best do our job for the kid and for Singapore swimming is probably the most important thing to keep in mind here. We want the athlete to have a long career, and where we're at, where I'm at in the middle, where other people are at, we're here to help the athlete have a long, successful career, not a career where they're superstars when they're 12 and we don't hear from again, or they leave the sport, because at that point we haven't done the best job by the athlete. We did the best job by what is good for us in that moment. And understanding that the development of the athletes and the development of swimming in the country is going to take time, we need to be respectful of that in those terms.
Yeah, thanks for that, Doug. Marcus, Leo, do you have anything to add with regards to that? Just keep it short. Thanks.
I think I'll just add on that I think one of those gaps is training the mind. Whether they are in their teens or they are kids or they are learn to swim or high performance or any other sport, I think the one thing that people are knowing more about, but still, I mean, it's still a changing thing. It's the mindset. How you cultivate that growth mindset, how you, like Marcus spoke earlier about motivation, creating the environment for them, the mindset of, and keeping them in the sport, keeping them interested and focusing on self development and skill mastery rather than, I can't do well because I'm limited. I'm this. That's all I have. That's all my talent brings me to. But if you can try to instill some kind of joy in skill mastery and enjoying themselves and learning how to practice until they get skill perfection. Okay, not perfection, mastery. And then they learn. They want to keep trying, and not be faced by simple setbacks. Just that never say die attitude. I think that's something very important throughout the pipeline. When they're younger, learn to play stage all the way through the development, competitive, and then after into high performance. Yeah, that's from me.
Mark?
Nope, I think everyone has said most of it. Yeah.
Okay. Next question, Lynette.
Hey, Susan was asking about short-term results. How coaches sometimes stress them on training, and some of the coaches probably have a short-term employment contract. How do you help other coaches to look at the greater good of swimming in Singapore?
I think it's a process. Always think of yourself as part of a pipeline of a journey with the athlete. As coaches, we are just here. We are facilitators. We are facilitators for them to move into another part of their journey and to make them understand where their next pathway is. Some kids will be for purely on a high performance basis. Some kids are not meant to be high performance. They just enjoy being in the company of being with in the system with the kids. So you need to draw out the good stuff from each of these guys and then see what is really beneficial for them as individuals. The allure of results, happening like overtraining and working towards quick times. Those are things that will take time to change. I think, Susan, you brought up a good point. We have to and let our swimmers enjoy, even at the high performance level. So many swimmers have gone through the path. Even for myself, when we were young, I think that at a point in time, a lot of us didn't understand what it meant to enjoy the sport fully. But I think once we understand the sport fully and we really bring out, when there's passion involved and there's a love for the sport, I think it changes the game. So you'll start to see kids coming through if they really have a lot of passion for the sport. So as coaches, we just need to maintain what is true to us, and that's actually bringing out the best out of the athlete, bringing the best out of the swimmer or whoever you're working with. And just remember that you're just that part of that journey. Even if it's 2 years, make the best out of those 2 years. I've had swimmers who were with me for 2 years, and I think there were some that that really hit their fullest potential, and there were some I made mistakes with over time, where some hit a plateau way too quick. Yeah, and unfortunately, sometimes it has to be at their expense as well. And I sometimes feel sorry for some of these athletes that I work with, but these are part and parcel of your coaching journey as well. Mark, do you have anything to add since you didn't answer this now? So.
No, I think short-term results always have that, with parents especially, they tend to want to put a lot of pressure on their kids to be fast, right? But then, what we actually, as a coach, we have to be very clear with our direction. especially with how we deal with our swimmers, right? And I think what Gary said just now, weighs a lot on how we as a bunch of coaches over here deal with some of these difficulties or some of these issues, right? A lot of the swimmers who are in the 11 or 12 years old areas, what they try to do is that they try to be as fast as possible then, and then once they get into the school of their choice, they just stop, right? So how do we actually have that kind of long-term development? And I don't like to use the LTAD model, but how do we actually put through?
Don't say that to Leo.
How do we actually put through this idea of building skills, right? And skills that are able to help them through their careers as a teenager, and then developing them from a teenager to a little bit more mature swimmer, right? Some of the swimmers that actually did very well in the past couple of years, they were just enjoying the sport at 11 and 12 years old. A very good example is Danny Yeo, who was one of the last few swimmers who just recently retired. He only started becoming slightly more interested in competitive swimming when he was actually 17 years old. So it's not that you have to only have interest in that 2 years, but I think if you're able to incorporate or instill skill-based progression during the younger years, I think you're going to get a little bit better skill acquisition, even if they go away or go back to their home country. The 2 years that you have, make the best out of it. Gary or Lynette?
Yeah, no, I think Mark, you brought up a good point about skill-based. I think we can definitely elaborate a bit more on that. I think in the future, if any of the coaches are interested about what it means to be in a skill-based environment for their programs, you guys are more than welcome to shoot those questions to Lynette after this, and then maybe we can delve into it a bit more for the future. Lynette, the questions?
We will take one more question. That one is about like swim safer. So it's like a mental model perception. Most learn to swim coaches are delivering the swim safer program. So now Bihong is asking, how do we correct most of the parents' misconception that swim safer is part of swimming?
Bihong, I think you asked a good question. This has always weighed on my mind quite a fair bit, and I don't want to. There are people, swim safer is designed for keeping the kids safe. Maybe I might shoot myself in the foot if I said this, but what the heck? I think actually swim safer is not relatable to swimming in some sense. I very much prefer the element of coaches wanting, and if any of the coaches feel offended by this, I apologize first. But swim safer is not teaching swimming. Swim safer is just teaching a skill of being water safe. But I think it's important that we have to specify that. I guess it comes with bigger parties getting involved in trying to explain that swim safer is it's a different component from actually swimming itself. And I think water safety in my aspect is if you learn how to swim, that in itself is a very big element of water safety as well. So this is definitely for the higher powers. I don't think I have that power to decide now, but I really hope one day that we can understand and see certain things change, especially with regards to swim safer and swimming in itself, and actually have a differentiating factor between the two. Swim safer is there to stay. I'm quite sure. But we have to work around the system and build a pipeline. You'll be able to understand that it is not the only way to teach swimming as well. So we have to make the higher powers understand that as well, I think. So Leonard or Marcus or Doug, I don't know whether you know enough about swim safer. I have to be frank, I don't know enough. But I think Leonard would be a very good case he can actually put across a bit of a case for that as well. Leonard?
So, okay. I think, like what G said, maybe this needs to be a conversation with certain groups of people. But what we as Learn to Swim teachers or coaches can do, definitely, I think one of those things is create a pipeline or let the parents educate the parents that there's such a thing called pathway development, a pipeline where they can go to. It's not just learn to swim safer and then, oh yeah, we're done. I can swim. I can swim like any competitive swimmer. No, it doesn't happen that way. But I think what we can do, a simple solution could be maybe make friends with certain swim schools or programs that offer a pathway beyond swim safer, or more structured, or you as a learn to swim coach. Yes, I understand a lot of learn to swim coaches are freelance. There's pool space issues, there's pool booking space issues. But maybe something can be done with regards to just having a simple pipeline. Say, okay, maybe after Swim Safer, what do we do? A introduction to competitive swimming or developmental kind of program. And then still subsequently, channel out to different, if anyone out there can say that, oh, my program, I pride myself on having a program that channels swimmers to all the top clubs in Singapore, channels swimmers or athletes to synchronized swimming or the water polo clubs in Singapore, and that's a pretty damn good thing, right? That could just be a simple solution to address that to prevent that kind of stop from, like if we have 4,000 learn to swim swimmers and then beyond Swim Safer it becomes like 200, then that's a pretty poor transition lah. So if we can create pipelines even within the Learn to Swim community, or just create partnerships amongst each other and have that, it's like a joint project thing to the swimmers in the sport.
I think we definitely address some of the stuff here in Swim Safer. I think like a lot of people have been talking. Like I see this on the chat. You know what? It's a lively conversation, and definitely we want to address this, but probably on a different level. But we definitely want to answer more competitive questions if we can. But I do appreciate the lively conversation. I think it opens a can of worms, and I think if we have to address it, we definitely should address it as well. So we're happy to address more questions on the competitive side. But this is a lively conversation, guys, and I love it. Because to me, this is the way we should be addressing certain things, in the forum of conversation.
Lynette, do we have time?
Yeah, we are mindful that some coaches actually have appointments or they have virtual classes that they have to continue. What we will do is to actually, for those coaches who needs to go, right, we will still have this session recorded on Facebook Live.